I think now to complete this arc, we now move on to an equally important question. How do we measure inclusion in speech AI? Now it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Raghu Dharmaraju, CEO of Art Park, to speak on what do we actually measure to call speech AI inclusive.
Hi everyone, can you hear me? Yes, no, end of the day, don't care, right? Hi everyone, my name is Raghu. I'm CEO of Art Park. Art Park stands for AI and Robotics Technology Park. We are a non-profit created by the Indian Institute of Science, and we work with many partners in essentially creating technologies that are actually useful for society and economy. So we say we are at heart venture builders, and ventures are of both for profit and non-profit in nature. And one partnership that has really made it very meaningful for us to work in this space has been to work with Professor Prashanta Ghosh here. I don't know where Prashanta is. Maybe he's out. But I really want to give a shout out because without him, we wouldn't have gotten started in the voice tech space at all. For me, the motivation was very simple. Right? I've been working in the tech for social good space now 15, 16 years. And what struck me from the very beginning is that the failure of most tech seemed to come down to unfriendly design. Right? How many of you experience unfriendly design every day? I'm surprised. Are you folks from Bangalore or somewhere else? Which roads are you on? Right? See, we experience unfriendly design everywhere, right? Examples of unfriendly design. You have soapy hands, you're trying to turn the knob is round. You can do whatever you want, right? But it's not going to turn.
You mean to say all Bangalore flyovers are undesigned?
I mean, it's not generally about Bangalore. I should not point out Bangalore, but generally we experience unfriendly road and pavement design every day, right? And that's what impedes our ability. Why do you not go out to eat as much and order in instead, right? In some sense, it's the frictionful experience of getting out there that is stopping you from going and actually dining out with your friends or family, where you are instead going to sit in your room and impinge the inconvenience on someone else for hopefully not that much price, right? The gig workers. Now, the thing that struck me with lots of apps that were launched, that were beginning to get launched back in 2010 onwards, right? We started seeing the first smartphones 2007 onwards or so, right? And then there were feature phones. And to me, the graveyard of apps, as I especially worked quite a bit in health, graveyard of apps came down to this unfriendly, unempathetic, right? Perhaps lazy design. Right? And the biggest part of all this was this whole experience of typing. How many of you like typing on your phones? You like typing on your phone? No, I'm only partly judging you, right? Right. Actually, none of us are natural typers on a phone, right? We might type on a laptop, right? But we don't type on a phone. And what if you are not digital natives like you and me, right? You are more of a digital native than I was. I first ran into a computer in my undergrad, right? Before that, I had not touched a computer, right? So, but you are digital natives, but there are folks who have not touched a computer in their life, right? If you go to my mother and give her a laptop, she's going to be all lost. She's already lost on her phone, even with Telugu interfaces and all that, right? So this is really fundamentally what inclusivity comes down to. Right? You have digital, you want digital India, you want Viksit Bharat, you want an inclusive India. It cannot happen without natural interfaces. And voice tech is really at the core of that, right? And health is the most difficult one. How many of you have ever been in some argument over outcomes versus outputs in some technology solution? Okay, one hand. Okay, Sunaina, of course, right? You have at some point. So outcomes, what are health outcomes? Give me some examples of a health outcome. Okay, you take a medicine, you get better. That's a health outcome. Is that fair? Right? So that's a very physical thing, right? You have something, you get better. So health outcomes are typically measured in what are called DALYs and QALYs. Ever heard the term? Disability adjusted life years, quality adjusted life years. Mota moti, what that means is everything can be measured as some change, some positive or negative in your quality of life is essentially what it means, right? So let's say I live to 100, but let's say I'm from 80 to 100, I'm entirely bedridden. Those 20 years are really not going to count for quality of life, right? So outcomes are at that level in health, right? And that's how they are measured. So if you take a medicine, you get better in, let's say, instead of 5 days by yourself, versus you took the medicine and you got better in 2 days, right? Those 2 days are what you attribute to that. The additional, I don't know, 3 minus 2, 5 minus 2, 3 days, right? That's what is really the incremental benefit of that. Now, if you take tech, right? You say you are going to do this voice thing, and then you're going to, how do you now quantify how much impact you've really had? Very tough, right? So you end up measuring things in between. Right? So for example, a medical device company that I had helped build was about preventing hypothermia in babies, right? Really, we wanted to hit infant mortality rate, but we knew that if we were to keep babies at a certain temperature, automatically infant mortality rate comes, and those numbers are there. So a lot of voice tech is about access, right? Access, and to know that. But you need to be able to measure, right, that the actions after the voice tech are happening, that the voice tech is giving the right information that is actually actionable, working backwards, that whatever core models you are using have the right knowledge and context, right, to take the inputs, and the inputs are understood, right? These are all different evaluations that have to be done. I'm not the scientist here. You have lots of scientists here who can measure that. But one thing I would really suggest that you do generally when you put out there is do at least the smallest real field pilots. Maybe it's just 5 users, 10 users. Makes a huge difference, right? It's how many of you, what languages were we looking at today? Or what regions were we looking at? We were broadly looking at Hindi? No. All Indic languages. About 11 Indic languages. The trick of those Indic languages will be that they work in some place a little far from the metros, right? That they work in places that, and to me, going in with your design research team early on and understanding that makes a huge difference, right? How many of you here have worked with design researchers as part of your team? Okay, few hands. This is another thing I would very highly recommend. This, you might see it as qualitative research as opposed to what quantitative research, that quantitative metrics that you're used to. But I have found that at least in early stages, working with design researchers has a huge impact on what you ultimately build. Design research is essentially, I think of a collection of methodologies which help you understand your users very well, right? When we were first working with Arman, before we built any models, right, we did this kind of user research. For example, Wizard of Oz. Any of you heard of Wizard of Oz experiments? So building AI is tough, expensive, time-consuming, etc., etc., right? So what we said is, how about we get few humans to pretend to be AI and behave in a certain way in response to queries that are coming from frontline health workers. And we'll see how they also interact with this pseudo bot. Through that, we learned various behaviors. We learned behaviors that we should have expected but still surprised us, such as if the persona of the bot is female, the frontline health workers communicated more freely, as opposed to if a bot was male. Right? It's a bot, right? But those things matter. We are humans at the end of the day, right? And we are a product of the experiences, right, good and bad, of our entire life, right? So if you have been, and as a culture in India, it's still very much a male-dominant society, and especially male figures are there especially in positions of authority. It's mostly male figures, right? And here you want a frontline health workers to communicate freely about high-risk pregnancies and many sensitive issues that are in there with a male figure. It might not happen, right? Those things matter. We also found out how they make spelling mistakes, Telugu written. These were some early work we did in Telangana. How Telugu was written in English, English was written in Telugu. There was spelling mistakes all the way around. And still somehow as humans we understood it, but the bots didn't, right? So I would say it's really a progression. So starting from the way I typically think of it is, first understand what constitutes success for your beneficiaries and users. Work backwards to understanding what you need to build. That involves not immediately measuring word error rates or something like that, but it's really about first understanding what the users want and then working from there regarding what's the tech stack you need to build. In the tech stack, you can figure out whether the inputs are being properly understood, whether the knowledge is there to respond, and whether those responses are being synthesized in a way that are useful, and ultimately whether the actions are being taken on the output that's given by AI, right? That's also quite important. Because otherwise then, what the hell? If you say, go take this medicine, that medicine is not available. Sorry, no award for making great voice tech, right? I know we are ultimately technologists, but what I hope you will do is engage with the problem you're trying to solve really deeply and then ask what technologies you need to bring together, right? So that would be my single message, and thanks of course to the organizers here and all of you for participating in this hackathon. Hopefully this gave you a taste for what a real challenge looks like. Thank you so much. Happy to take any questions.
One of the very good points you mentioned is that output versus outcome, right? So we typically just care about output, but actually what matters is the outcome, right? But actually, if you look at all the startups and right now all the trend which is going on, like any startup you ask, they start with AI powered, AI based, and that itself shows that their main focus is, so they never start that this is the problem they are solving. No, they will always say, we are building AI powered voice recognition system, suppose for example. So my question to you is that, don't you think that the trend should change, that the students, especially let's say this college, right? The students should shift the focus from technology only, as you mentioned, right? That the outcome is more important. So I think that current ecosystem of whether it's VCs, investors, everybody is nowadays just running after what is the AI application here? Like it's the direct question, whether AI is actually needed or not, but they ask where is the AI here? So my question is, what do you think?
So see, I mean, your answer is implied in your question, which is that we should be looking at really what problem we are solving. I'm happy to share separately a framework. We typically ask whether, I mean, AI for X is like the flavor of the day, right? But is it a good idea is what we ask before we typically start. We ask, is this a big problem, really? And what is the precise problem that AI is expected to solve? Is AI feasibility there? Is AI necessity there, right? And these are, and is the data going to be there or can be collected in a reasonably economic manner? Do we have collaborators with whom we can co-create on the ground, right? Not just build something, throw it on the ground. Do we have scaling partners? Do we have financial sustainability? All these are questions we typically ask as part of the process of deciding whether we should embark on doing something or not, right? We can't change hype cycles. We are in a hype cycle. Let's use it to our best advantage. That is, let's try to get some attention from technologists to problems that typically might not otherwise receive attention, for sections of society that might typically not receive attention, right? And if we can use this hype cycle for that, that's great. It's hype cycle will be hype cycle. Sure.
Have you deployed your bot anywhere, and what is the feedback?
Yeah, there are folks who can give you better up-to-date information, but right now across 4 or 5 districts in eastern UP, with frontline health workers, it is being deployed. I think something like 2,000 frontline health workers. A&M, all the A&M cadre folks are using it. We have human-in-the-loop evaluation from experts. That's at 96, 97% in terms of the responses being, all the responses are being rated. Similarly, every response that is given is also rated by the recipients of that response, the frontline health workers, to say whether they were actually, whether they were happy enough with the response, whether they could move forward with it because of it or not. That is also at 96 to 97% currently. Perhaps the biggest, the metric that perhaps is most encouraging for us is the fact that the number of queries that were going to the medical officers, because essentially what we are trying to do is lots of regular queries around high-risk pregnancies go to medical officers. And they are overwhelmed. They don't get response immediately. They get response in hours, sometimes even more than a day, right? I don't know what the response times are. Maybe Sanskriti can tell you exact what. But the number of responses that are going to them have come down to something like 14%. So which means we have reduced the burden of the frontline, the medical officers by 86%. And these folks are getting the response they need to the queries they want immediate response to.
What is your backend and LLM, is it?
So actually, the series of things, we can talk about that offline. There are various models that are being used for various tasks, right? Yes, there is an LLM at the heart of it, of course, but since these are multimodal, right, code mixed queries, you can imagine there's various things that have to happen. First, to make sure that we understood the query the way it was meant to be, right? Then to say whether or not we actually have the knowledge and in the context to answer the query. Then to synthesize a response that is in a way both that is accurate but also is useful and actionable for them. So all these things are measured, right?
What's your view on security per se for the voice-enabled bots? Especially, okay, I used to feel like when my kids used to play on Alexa or anything, even the neighbors, okay, they will come to know all unwanted, okay, details easily, okay, they will get. Vice versa is also happening. This is a pretty so
I'm
from
not
the
an
security point of thing, when we are orally telling, unknowingly or knowingly, we will be leaking out so many, secret, data.
There are a lot of issues around. I'm not an expert in this at all by any stretch of imagination. It worries me too. I worry especially about a day when I cannot distinguish a bot call that might sound like my kid's in trouble.
Yes.
That's what I worry about, right? And or my mom in trouble who is not at all. My kids, they will be more tech savvy than I am, but certainly not my parents, right? So I don't have a good answer to this, and I just hope the big companies who are deploying this sort of technology are able to help us with this, right? So.
Hello. My question is on that bot that we also work on a similar kind of bot. It is mostly for the aversion, safe aversion. And we faced a challenge that on evaluation side, it changes with the bot time period. Like when we at the launching time, there were the different challenges on evaluation. When it goes on the field different, and when we get the messages from the FCSB, from community health volunteers, like
then
different.
it's entirely different.
Yeah.
It basically means the data set on which you had started working with iterating on was never representative of your field setting.
So the data was collected in different way. Like they were on the field also, but I want to know more what is the evaluation things is carried on this chatbot later on also, so that I can improve our evaluation system.
I'm not the best person to get into that level of technical detail. Do talk to team members here. Sanskriti is sitting right there. Do talk to her. But the general experience, by the way, this is not just about voice tech in general. We have found this surprisingly so even in what we might consider as fairly mature computer vision challenges, right? So it is very common for folks to develop AI in hospital settings, working with doctors. That you think you brought together a good enough data set, all that. You'll have a performance, then you go out on the field, then you have field level operators with field level equipment, then it doesn't work, right? So I think as part of your use case definition, all this has to be very laid out in quite a bit of detail, right? For example, you might say, ASHA workers speaking these variants, right, of this language in these districts, asking queries about such and such thing, right? Because the terminology you're going to get, let's say, in a general conversation is going to be very different from a medical specific conversation, right? And it's incredible how different these terminologies can be, right? And how one term can mean different things in different cultural contexts, right? So a lot of it comes down to those sort of, really understanding the deployment context.
Thank you.
I don't know how much organizers, please cut me off at any point you want me to stop talking. Last question.
Sir, as I told that your system is deployed in Eastern UP, districts of Eastern UP. So what language do most interactions are in? These are in standard Hindi language or localized?
No, standard Hindi language, forget it, right? These will be things like Maithili, right? Bhojpuri. I don't know what other languages we run into.
Bhojpuri is mostly spoken in that area, and standard Hindi is officially.
Yeah. So there seem to be a lot of variants. Sometimes we actually don't know the variant. At some level, I don't care about what the name is of the language. We just want to bring together the right corpus from that area to know that it works in that area. In most situations, in most of our settings, it's actually quite a mix. You'll find people who are speaking what you might call regular Hindi, but who the hell are we to say what is regular Hindi? That's a very pundit, I'm the person to say this is the regular Hindi sort of thing, right? So we actually don't get into that. We instead say, what is the variety of language that's spoken and can we understand that?
Okay, but you respond, your bot responds in standard Hindi only.
Bot responds in whatever Hindi is understood there.
Okay.
It is standard Hindi. If the user has chosen Hindi, we do support English as an output option as well, if the user prefers that. And it's usually code mixed. And all of that is by design. So we, like Raghu mentioned, we've worked with design teams. And the feedback we've gotten from the ground is that users prefer numbers to be in English, specifically ANMs. So 100.4 degree fever is easier to understand compared to 100.4. Yeah. So those are nuances that are included in when we send the response. So it is standard
Depends on the
Hindi,
user preferences. Depends on user preferences. But your point is very well taken. At what point can we start talking to them truly in their native tongues, right? I don't know what that challenge is, and I don't know, it may be worth solving, but first let's talk in a way they understand. Let's understand them, whatever they are speaking in, and then give responses in a way that they understood, right? And that bar we are meeting, because they are responding that they understood and like our response and have been found it useful up to 97%.
Sir, at the art park, you are mostly doing with only robotics kind of thing, or even
Broadly, this is also work we are doing, right? So AI and robotics broadly. With that, thank you so much. Appreciate it. And again, I am very much an imperfect messenger for the technical metrics side of this, but hopefully you got the gist of the message, which is keep the real impact you want to have in mind and work backwards. You're all engineers. I'm sure you know how to come up with the right metrics for the right impact. Thanks.
Thank you, Raghu, for such a thought-provoking session. May I now invite Mr. Nihar to present small token of appreciation to Raghu.